All right, I have a very special guest with me today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to go over questions that I have on behalf of my community. Robert, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good to meet you, Stephen. I'm happy to be here.
I have pursued this interview for 13 months, so I'm grateful that we're able to make it happen. I wanted to pick your brain.
Persistence.
Yeah, you've been busy. You've been very busy. So I wanted to pick your brain on this. You've talked about corporate capture. Donald Trump has talked about draining the swamp. Where do you actually start? So, for example, if Trump says, Bobby, I trust you, go make America healthy and great again, where do you go?
Well, to make America healthy, you've got to start with two large departments. One is the USDA, and the other is HHS. And HHS is the parent agency for NIH, which is scientific research, CDC, and FDA. And the worst corruption, I would say, that contributes to the chronic disease crisis is at FDA, which does drug and food regulation. And it's the poison food that is the primary vector or the primary cause of chronic disease in this country. It's ultra processed foods. It's chemicals in foods, all kinds of. There's 1,000 ingredients in our foods in this country that are illegal in Europe and illegal in other Western nations. And then we have the ultra processed corn, ultra processed wheat, ultra processed soy, and sugars that are also part of the problem. So the FDA enables those foods, and we can change them very quickly. NIH also is part of the problem. NIH no longer does the kind of gold standard scientific research that it did in the past. It mainly does drug development, and it stopped the kind of studies that, in fact, actively discourage the kind of studies that may identify the primary culprits behind the chronic disease epidemic. So it won't study the etiology, the origins, or the causation of the epidemic. It won't, for example, ask the question, why have autism rates gone from 1 in 10,000 in my generation today, 70-year-old men, to 1 in every 34 kids in my children's generation, 1 in every 22 kids in some states like California. What is the cause of that sudden explosion of autism? Why has diabetes gone from essentially non-existent? When I was a kid, the average pediatrician would see 1 case of diabetes in a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 children who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. Why is this happening? Isn't that something that NIH should identify the specific culprits? Culprits like high fructose corn syrup, ultra processed sugars, and ultra processed grains. Clearly, those are some of the culprits. But if we had very, very strong science on it, it would be much easier to do something about it. And unfortunately, CDC, and then other epidemics, so the autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, the explosion in allergic diseases that began in the mid-1980s, peanut allergies suddenly appeared. Why did that happen? Why don't we know why that happened? Why are we the sickest people in the world? Why do we have the highest chronic disease burden of any people in the world? So those agencies need to start answering those questions. And then USDA is largely at fault too, because of the farm subsidy and crop insurance programs that give hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies to GMO corn and wheat and soy, which become the feedstock for this industry. And the way that those crops are grown nowadays, they produce food that is very, very low on nutrients. So those kind of crops used to be nutrient dense, and now they have very few nutrients, and they make you gain weight. The way that they're processed to make them addictive. So you gain weight, you're not satisfied with them, but also you're malnourished. So the biggest demographic for malnutrition in our country today are obese people. And obesity has gone from 3.4% when my uncle was president, I was a 10-year-old boy, to 74% of Americans today are obese or overweight.
Oh, wow. That is a big jump. Let me switch gears with you. President Trump has talked about the need to rebuild the military. Obviously, we have a military industrial complex that is greedy for taxpayer money. How do we strengthen America and have the best military in the world, but at the same time not be giving so much money away to foreign nations and getting ourselves entangled in what could end up in World War III?
President Trump is very committed to ending the forever wars, and that's going to mean closing a lot of the bases abroad. We have 800 bases abroad right now. The Russians have one, the Chinese have 1.5. We have 800, and each one of those is essentially an opportunity waiting to happen. It's a war waiting to happen for the military-industrial complex. We spend about double what we were in real dollars, what we were spending during the height of the Cold War. And I remember in 1992 when the walls came down, and in Europe, when the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union collapsed, and we were told that we were going to get a peace dividend and that the military expenditures were going to be cut from 600 billion to 200 billion. And the purpose was to essentially create Fortress America, to make us so that we were too expensive to invade at home, and we were armed to the teeth along our borders. We could protect the sea lanes. We could protect neutral areas like the Antarctic. We had a 2-strike capacity around the world to punish really bad behavior. But that we weren't stretched out. Our battle lines weren't stretched out all across the globe, which weakens countries. Was weakening us and making us less popular, making America less safe, both abroad and at home. And that was the purpose, but we never got the peace dividend. Instead, we're spending about 1.3 trillion instead of going down to 200 billion. If you add the veterans benefits, if you add the national security and the foreign aid, which is military, of course, we're paying about 1.3 trillion a year. Well, most of that has nothing to do with national defense. It has to do with global domination. And that's something that's actually hurting our country. You see the rise of BRICS today. And this week, the BRICS nations are meeting, and we're about to lose the dollar as the global reserve currency, the global safe haven currency, the global trade currency. And this is going to be like a nuclear bomb going off in our economy. And it's because of our belligerent posture around the world. So we can cut the military budget down to about 500 billion and actually make our national defense much, much stronger.
Okay, thank you for that. President Trump gave an interview recently, and he said one of his biggest concerns about Kamala Harris getting in, besides World War III, part of making America healthy again is making our gut healthy again. Are you looking to do something better with your health? Look no further than Kimchi One from Bright Core Nutrition. Kimchi One packs all the fermented nutrition of kimchi in convenient capsules. It's done so much for rebuilding my gut health since getting COVID. It's also given me more energy and boosted my immune system as well as other areas of my health. Kimchi One is all natural, made in the United States, and non-GMO. I highly recommend this product because all health starts in the gut. So putting the right fermented superfood in your gut improves every aspect of your health, your skin, your hair, your mental performance, and you can do it all the natural way. Today, you can get an exclusive offer for my viewers. Buy 2 bottles of kimchi and get 1 bottle absolutely free by clicking the link below, or call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call now at 888-908-4425. I interviewed the founder of Brightcore, Kim Bright, and she gave us so much fantastic information about what this can do for your health. I have linked this interview down below, so go watch it to learn more about this incredible product. All right, let's get back to the interview. Was losing the dominance of the US dollar as the global reserve currency. It sounds like you share that same concern based on what you just said.
Yeah, I share that concern. A general concern about the financial illiteracy in the White House today and on Kamala Harris's staff, financial illiteracy. The kind of proposals that she has been offering are, I would say, I don't want to I don't want to do name calling, but they're sophomoric. The price controls and wage controls have been so utterly discredited throughout history that nobody serious would propose them. Her proposal to give $50,000 to every new business is just, it's a fairy tale. It's out of touch with any kind of reality. There's 1,000 new businesses started every day in New York. That would be $50 million a day just in New York. And you have that. And of course, if you started handing out $50,000 for every new business, that number would double or triple overnight, because everybody would be rushing to the trough to get theirs. So and then her only kind of serious proposal is not to tax tips, which was President Trump's proposal. So there's been no serious economic proposals. The idea that we can, her whole posture about making America dominate the globe using our military power is the attitude that is adding $1 trillion a day, every 90 days to our national debt. We need to get this budget deficit under control. We need to begin reversing our national debt, and if we don't do that, we're going to lose, not just our status, the dollar status as a global reserve currency, but we're going to be bankrupt within 5 years. At this rate, 50 cents out of every dollar that we collect in taxes will go to servicing the debt. We're already paying more to service the debt than our national defense budget. Oh, it's unsustainable.
Yeah. I've always had a lot of respect for you, and you were one of the first presidential candidates to go to the U.S. southern border. You said, what's all this information about an invasion on the border, all these illegals pouring into the country? You went down there, you saw with your own eyes what was really going on. Time has passed since you did that. What are your thoughts on this, lack of control at the border and how many people are coming into the country?
Well, I think most Americans now realize what a mistake that policy was. I've been to the border on multiple occasions, and it's like watching the start of the Boston Marathon. There's just people, humanity streaming across through these giant gaps in the fence that were created. And I have to say this, I was opposed to Trump's wall. I thought it was ridiculous. Once I got down there, I talked to the Border Patrol, I talked to law enforcement on both sides of the border. I talked to local people in those communities, visited the hospitals, the rape centers, everything else. And it's clear what a huge catastrophe this has been. And the wall should have been completed within the first few months of the Biden administration. Most of it was built. You don't need a wall 2,200 miles from Brownsville, Texas to San Diego. You need to have that kind of large physical barrier in the urban areas, the areas that are heavily populated, where people can come across and disappear very quickly. And the Biden administration called a termination of construction the day that President Biden took the oath of office. So if you go down there, there's 27 gaps in the wall, and they're not that big, but they're enough for all of humanity to pour through. And sitting right next to those gaps in the wall are tens of millions of dollars of construction material that were meant to have completed the wall. So it's sitting there as an example of political pettiness and bad policy, and as a monument to that, this rotting, fences lying on the ground. And the Biden administration not only did that, but they changed the policies. They changed the catch and return policy to catch and release. They reassigned the Border Patrol from protecting the border to processing immigrants as they came across. And they terminated the Migrant Protection Act, which would have required asylum seekers coming from other countries into Mexico to process their claims in Mexico before coming across. And those are the policies that led to this, this destructive migration, where the estimates are from 10 to 20 million people have come across. And it's the size of 36 states combined. It's unsustainable, and we're paying for it everywhere. Every city in our country is now a border state. And, I see in New York what's happened with migrants encamped on the sidewalk, with official camps now on the playing fields at Rikers Island for migrants so that our children can't do their sports in public schools. And the social service system's collapsing in Detroit and in Minneapolis and Chicago and New York because they're being overwhelmed by people who can't legally get jobs in this country. And then you see predatory employers hiring migrants for $6 or $7 an hour and bidding, against union shops for government jobs. And of course, they're going to win that bidding contest because they're not paying union wages. And it hurts everybody. It hurts everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
During the last decade of his life, I worked very close with Cesar Chavez, who had a very close relationship with my dad. And, I had worked with Cesar in the 68 campaign when my father was running, and then in the 1980 campaign when I was running my uncle Ted Kennedy's campaign in the southern states. And Cesar Chavez was very instrumental in winning, for example, the state of Arizona, where I am today. He sent lowriders from all over California to Arizona to get out the vote. And I worked with him very closely the last 10 years of his life. And I was a pallbearer in his funeral. The last 10 years of his life, I was working with him on pesticide issues. Pesticides disproportionately harm Hispanic farm workers. He was deeply concerned about that. But his other big concern at that time was closing the border and ending illegal immigration, because he saw how the immigrants coming across, who were desperate people, were taken advantage of by predatory employers, and that it was hurting his ability to negotiate for good wages and good salaries for the American workers, Hispanic workers who otherwise would have held those jobs.
Okay. Final question. I know we're up against the clock here. The United States used to be known for our ability to do diplomacy. It seems like now the United States hides behind our military to get things done. Do you think if Trump can get into office that he and you and others will be able to have diplomatic meetings with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky to be able to finally end this Russia-Ukraine war?
Yeah, well, I mean, the war will end as soon as the United States stop financing it. It's going to end anyway within a year because the Ukrainian army is beaten and they're folding at this point. The army is collapsing, and the insane idea to invade Russia in Kursk, it has only hastened that collapse. And now, in a last desperate attempt, Zelensky is making the White House approve a plan to fire missiles into Russia. This will not save Ukraine. And his only gambit at this point is to embroil NATO in a full-scale war and America with Russia. So, my uncle during his term did everything he could to avoid war with Russia. And he was corresponding and talking with Khrushchev all the time. And the Biden administration will not talk to Putin. And my uncle always said, if you want to avoid war, and that's the primary job of a president of the United States, to keep the country out of war. That's what John Kennedy said. That the only way to do that is if you understand your adversary and understand, Putin has legitimate national security interests in Ukraine. Ukraine shares a 2,200-mile border with Russia. If NATO goes in there and puts these Aegis missile systems, which it intends, in Ukraine, we would be able to fire nuclear missiles into Russia, hit the Kremlin in 3.5 minutes. And that destabilized the whole globe. We could decapitate the entire Russian leadership. Of course, we wouldn't tolerate that on our border. We wouldn't tolerate Russia taking over Canada. And, we overthrew the government of Ukraine in 2014, put in our own government. Zelensky is a U.S. puppet. And this is a geopolitical, machinations again. It's not a war to free Ukraine. This is a war to degrade Russia, to exhaust its capacity to fight anywhere in the world. And that, that quote, those words were used by Lloyd Austin, who was the Secretary of Defense, to describe what our interests were in the Ukraine. So it's not about, we've killed 600,000 kids there. And the Russians have repeatedly tried to settle this war on terms that were very beneficial to Ukraine and to the United States. And we've refused those offers. In fact, we made, Zelensky signed an agreement with Russians in April of 2022. And President Biden sent Boris Johnson over there and forced him to tear up the agreement. And since then, 600,000 Ukrainian kids and probably around 300,000 Russians have died. And it's inexcusable. It's a war crime.
Yeah.
We are lied to about it all the time. We're told the Ukrainians are winning, which is utter nonsense. We're told, we're not told the casualty rates. No American papers will print these casualty rates. In fact, the first one to print them was last week when the Wall Street Journal finally acknowledged that over 500,000 Ukrainian kids have died. My son fought over there. I don't agree with my son on every issue, or any of my kids, and I raised them to disagree with me. And he went over and put his money where his mouth was and joined a Foreign Legion and fought the Ukrainian military in the Kursk offensive as a machine gunner in a special forces unit. And he saw he saw war firsthand, and it's not a good thing for anybody. And it's destroyed Europe.
Yeah.
We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and Europe now, the industrial base of Europe has collapsed. All the chemical plants in the Ruhr Valley are closing in Germany. There are steel plants, there are automobile plants. Volkswagen may go bankrupt. It's what we've done to Europe is inexcusable, and it's a mess, and we created it.
Yeah. Well, I know we have limited time. I want to be respectful of that. Thank you so much for coming on my channel. I'm doing everything I can to get you and JD Vance and Trump and others in the White House so that we can make America healthy again and make America great again. Thank you, sir, for coming on and for all you do for the country. And I thank you again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephen, for having me. Enjoyed talking to you.